哇，你参与了，快呀！So good. Okay. Okay, we have 6 MCQs. Sorry, not 8 MCQs. Anyone would like me to go through any of the questions? 6, 7, 8. Okay, open call. Next week when we go through papers or MCQ, we'll do the same thing. I'll just collate as many people who need certain questions, then we'll go through selectively. Question 1, anyone? No? You're going to skip, huh? Question 2? Question 3? Okay. Anyone else for question 3? Okay. Anyway, I write down just so I can check back with you if you're okay. More? One more. Okay, question 3. Next, question 4. Question 4. Question 5. Whoa. Okay. Question 6. 6. Question 7. Question 8. Blood type. Okay, let's start with question 3. What causes the first heart sound after atrial systole in the cardiac cycle? Okay. We know how the heart works up. We go by the sequence. So, atrial systole, ventricular systole, ventricular diastole. Yeah? Tap, tap, tap. Okay, so, they say, when do you hear the first heart sound? So after atrial systole, after the atrium contracts, blood flows from the, it is just one side of the heart. Blood flows from the atrium to the ventricle when the atrium contracts. Yeah? This valve will need to open, right? For blood to flow to the ventricle. But actually, it's not the opening of valves that causes sound, it's the closing of valves. Just like how when the door slams shut, you hear a pop. When you open the door, no sound. So that means the next possible time when you may hear a door slam shut is when your ventricles contract. When the ventricle contract, blood will rush out here. Blood will want to try to go back, but we need to slam this door shut. This door over here, the semilunar valve, will be wide open. So the only door that's being slammed shut is this door over here. Which side of the heart is this? They did not say. So we can generalize to say it's an atrioventricular valve. But if we specifically say it's the right side of the heart, that will be the tricuspid valve. The left side of the heart will be the bicuspid valve. So the next best possible time when you may hear a valve close is during ventricular systole, when it tries to go back. So what causes the first heart sound after this phase? The first heart sound you hear is of this. Okay? Next, let's go to question 5. I've never taught you this skill before. They show you the pressure graph, which is just a part of the pressure graph, one of them. And then they ask you, what is the heart rate represented by? Sorry, do you actually have a question? You have no question, right? I feel like your worksheet doesn't have a question stem. It doesn't ask you what is the heart rate, right? Just go straight to the option. So you all managed to do without the question? Right, okay. It's a high level of stuff. Okay, so what is represented by this graph? Which one represents the heart rate? Okay, then the biggest question here is, what do we consider as a heartbeat? Is a heartbeat just a single contraction of the ventricle? Okay, a heartbeat consists of everything that happens within one cardiac cycle. From the atrial systole to the ventricular systole to the ventricular diastole, all of them complete, that is one cycle. That is one heartbeat. So one heartbeat in the biological terms is not you hearing boom. It is a boom, boom, boom. Everything at one go. So this represents cardiac cycle and a little bit more. The skill here is to decide where you want to cut off. Where does the heartbeat repeat itself? Where does the cardiac cycle repeat itself? It repeats itself starting from somewhere around here. Right? It's when it repeats itself again. So that means in around 0.7 something seconds, we have one heartbeat. In a minute, how many of these heartbeats will you find? So the math that you would do is to take, since one heartbeat equals to around 0.7, 5 seconds, right? Then per minute, okay, in 1 minute, which you will have 60 seconds, you take 60 divided by 0.75 to find out the number of heartbeats. Oh, sorry, the heart rate lah. Okay? I think if you do this math, you should get something along the lines of what the answer is around 80. Ladies, okay? Yes, Cassidy. Oh, if the numbers are so close. But the answer is closest to this one, right?
Yeah, but that's also the answer.
Say again?
Because the graph isn't clear.
Oh, the graph isn't clear. It is quite clear that you can sort of see where it repeats itself. From this point onwards, you see it looks very similar. So that means you repeat yourself somewhere over here. Yeah. The one that's not clear, right, will be later on the structure question. They ask you to calculate heart rate again. The one I think you may have some varying answers. But to me, it's quite clear where it repeats itself. It repeats itself wherever you started off from. If you start from here, then you will complete one cycle somewhere around here.
If it's structured, then would it be like
Yeah, some range. For MCQ, you choose the closest one, not necessarily the exact. Yes, Sri.
Wait, so heart rate is like the number of beats per minute, right? So shouldn't you like count from the first beat, which should be the start of ventricular systole?
Oh, okay. I think when we hear heart rate and when we say heartbeat, right, what comes to mind is that we require the first sound, right? In biological terms, when we say a heart rate or person's heartbeat, right, it encompasses the entire cycle, regardless of whether you heard the beat yet. And that's the biological idea of it. But I agree with you, in a layman's term, when we say a heartbeat, right, or heart rate, you would count the beating time, right? But if you count from the first beating time to the next beating time, it's a cardiac cycle. Yeah. Sarah got a question. Ladies, okay? Once they ask. Yeah. Let's go to question 6. Coronary heart disease caused by partial blockage of coronary arteries. Which blood flow does this reduce? help is knowing where the cardiac coronary arteries are. Your heart branching out from the aorta. So assuming this is the heart, okay. We know that the aorta branches out like that, right? Branching out from the aorta will be many blood vessels, coronary arteries, that will reach into every muscle that you can possibly find of your heart, cardiac muscle. It reaches from outside in. Where can you see this in your textbook? If you want to look at a particular image. Somewhere at the start, structure of the heart. Okay. See here? Branching up from the aorta, you have some coronary arteries coming out. These coronary arteries will branch out everywhere. Not to a particular ventricle or atrium. It envelopes so that we can supply every muscle of your heart with the necessary nutrients and oxygen. You may be wondering how come it's just the heart muscles, the ventricle and atrium cannot just get the nutrients from inside the chambers. Right? After all, blood is going to flow through the chambers and out. Why don't the nutrients just go directly to the muscles? I think two things. One, the speed at which the blood is flowing through does not give enough time for this diffusion to occur. Second, if I'm not wrong, what's holding all the tissue together, you also find a thin layer of, usually all organs have a thin layer of some sort of membranous fiber that holds the tissue together. And that would be a layer that will be hard to penetrate. But the speed at which it goes through is one of the key factors why you cannot just take from inside out. So, it's okay. Next. Question 7. Question 7 says, which statement about the heart is not correct? Whenever you see the word correct, you make sure you see if we put a not before it. It is much easier for a teacher to come up with one wrong statement than to come up with 3 wrong statements, right? Yeah. So we usually make our life quite easy by coming up with just one wrong statement. So which statement is wrong? Volume of blood passing from the left atrium equals the volume of blood passing through the left ventricle. It actually has to be the case. Although cognitively it looks a bit weird because the atrium looks smaller than the ventricle. But it is as such. Okay, I'm trying to wonder how the volume will make sense. These chambers are not fixed per se. You could expect that there can be some stretching when the blood first comes in from the atrium. Yes?
If the volume of blood passing through the door, then it's not the same, does it mean that there's like fluid?
It's not the same. That meant something leaked out along the way. Possible? I think another reason why it doesn't seem quite logical at first. Okay, so here's the atrium, here's the ventricle. Remember, there's one point in time when the ventricle is relaxing, the atrium is also relaxing. That's called the cardiac cycle, right? So it both relax. Actually, when they both relax, blood is not just flowing in here, it's also flowing in here. So actually, this chamber here has blood. This will also have blood when they are both relaxed. When the atrium contracts, it forces whatever blood is here into the ventricle. So now the ventricle has extra blood from up there. So it's true, the volume of blood passing from the left atrium will have to be equal to what ends up in the ventricle. Okay? Yeah. The volume of blood passing through the right atrium equals the volume of blood passing through the right ventricle. Is this the same as the top statement?
Yeah.
Okay, the only thing is left and right. Next, wall of the left atrium is thicker than the wall of the left ventricle. That's not true. You don't need it to be so thick. You just pump it to the next chamber. Last one, the wall of the left ventricle is thicker than the wall of the right ventricle. That is true. Why? Because you want to pump blood to the rest of the body. Yes?
When is the volume
systole when the blood passes from the atrium to the ventricle.
So the volume is the same in ventricular diastole.
In ventricular diastole, there is a, maybe I color code it up. There is this much volume of blood in the atrium and this much volume of blood in the ventricle. When we transit into the next atrial systole, whatever blood is here, that volume, when it gets transmitted here, should be the same volume. Granted, therefore, this ventricle now needs to stretch out a little bit.
So is it the volume of blood loss? It not only has the flow, it turns the rate.
But they are saying the volume of blood passing through. So the volume of blood that was here, that passed through to here, should be the same.
But is it the volume of blood passing through the left ventricle, both the flow and the rate should be down? That volume of blood passing through the left ventricle.
Oh, I see a point. But it's true, this blue one will eventually go up, the red one also go up. So it's squeeze here. Okay, I can see why wording wise you could say that at the end of the day, when it comes to here, we should add these two together, then it goes up together. Okay, I can see your logic. Okay. At least when this was crafted, I think the interpretation is whatever is here should be wholesale come together. There shouldn't be any difference. But I can see where you're coming from. Anyone interpret the same way Yishuan interpret? I never think so far. So Yishuan went not quite deep. Last question, MCQ. 4 different blood types. Which 2 patients are at risk of incompatible blood transfusion? Ooh. Wow, I think my face is getting black. Is it not? No, right? It's not getting darker and darker. Okay, blood group of patient, blood type received in transfusion. So we need to look from the perspective of this person and whatever antibodies the person has. Okay, blood group A will have anti-B antibodies. Blood group B will have anti-A antibodies. Blood group AB would have no antibodies for the blood type. Blood group O would have anti-A and anti-B. Yes.
Having all these different antibodies, does it mean that like people with blood type AB are like weaker in the sense receiving that
Weaker? What do you mean by weaker?
because they don't have that A or B antibodies.
Okay.
Does it mean that like they it's easier to get sick?
Okay. Therefore, the answer to that would be these antibodies are specific to just blood. This person would still have antibodies for other foreign things that are coming in.
So as long as the blood doesn't get mixed up, then
Right. So I think one thing to take away from this, when you see the word antibody, is as good as how we have thousands of different kinds of enzymes with thousands of different kinds of antibodies. Just like people with blood type AB just don't have any of these blood type antibodies. But they still have all the antibodies for other pathogens that may come in. Okay? So if this person P is receiving blood type O, would that be okay? That should be okay lah. Okay, blood type O should be okay. Person blood type B receiving AB, would that be a problem? I think there will be a problem because person with blood type AB would be detected by the anti-A antibodies. So from whose perspective? So this person's, the person that is donating, we will not donate their antibodies. We will just donate their red blood cells wholesale. So if we look at, this is the receiver, this is donor. So the receiver will have the antibodies. The donor, we're just looking at the blood. Okay? So this one will have a problem. So we try this one. So we have a problem. If we donate blood type B, No problem because they have no defense against the blood type. So it's okay. Last one, A donate to O. O has both antibodies, so there should be a problem. So the answer will be this. Just got a question. Who's blood? Anyone blood type AB here? Ah, good for you. Blood type O? Ah, bad for us. Once you hit the age group, you can start donating blood. We are always in short supply of blood type O. Yeah. Wait, was it this time that told you a story of how my whole arm turned black? Okay, now let's go to the structured question. This question shows you cardiac cycle graph. Nothing foreign, except we show you two graphs. Because one is on the left side, one's on the right side. Which one belongs to which side of the heart? We go back to the logic that the left side of the heart needs to pump blood at a higher pressure to the rest of the body. So the graph that's generated from it should be one that is much higher in pressure. The one on the right should be representing the left side of the heart. Usually in questions, we just show you one side of the heart, and we like to show you the left side of the heart. Okay, usually. But what does this mean for you? You want to double check which side of the heart we are providing to you. Because if we ask you to identify the valve that opens or closes, then there's a difference. Yeah? Okay, so make sure you know which side of the heart we're looking at. So which has the right, which has the left? Goes like that. Next question, they ask you, with your knowledge, explain why you think this is so. Okay, don't need to copy word for word. Instead, we focus on the vocabulary that will help you answer this elegantly. First and foremost, somewhere in your answer should bring across the idea that there's a thicker muscular wall. And if you can bring across the idea that we need a thicker wall so that it can pump blood at a higher pressure to where the rest of the body, anything else in between, up to you, your English. You can see that there's another way to argue this. You could instead look from the perspective of the right side of the heart. So as a biology student, really it's not about memorizing answers. You really must memorize something. You want to memorize the vocabulary so that you have the language to use when you are writing your essays or your structured answers. How you string them together is fluid. Yeah. Instead, if you are talking about right side of the heart, here they did not mention, we will assume you have to do a contrast that is thinner. If it's thinner, then the pressure will be lower. Yeah? If you want to go the right side of the heart route, then the right side of the heart should have a thinner muscular wall. Then they ask you to calculate the heart rate. Okay, I believe this is not right. Going by what I just taught you on how to calculate the heart rate, I don't think it's exactly 0.8 seconds. Because they gave you more than one cardiac cycle. It repeats somewhere towards the end. So we need to shave off a little bit of 0.8. So what is around? It's around 0.7 or just 0.7. Okay, 0.8 I would say that's definitely not right because they took a cardiac cycle plus a bit more. So, how you got question? Sorry? Oh, you have to round off. Do I do what? Oh. Yeah, okay, so inherently there's something off about this particular diagram. Okay, the problem would be in the statement on top, one cardiac cycle. I recall seeing in the exam paper when I first came in that whoever who gave 0.8 was still awarded the mark for that mistake made. Okay, but if you want to be very accurate, again, the repeat occurs somewhere over here. Somewhere over here it repeats itself. So it's around 0.7. Now your question is, okay. In the case of heartbeats per minute, can you leave it as a whole number? Leave it as a whole number. Okay, as I was marking your bio-practical, I realized the standards that every science teacher asks of you is different. What to round off to, or is it the same? You all round off to 3 sig when you are calculating. And some of you all round off to whole numbers. Yeah, so quite a number of you all round off to 3 sig. You do that in physics? No? Then what do you do in physics? Is it like you have to look at the precision of the instrument, then okay. Right. Then chemistry, what do you round off to? 3SM. Okay. Okay, so I had a hard time marking this one because some of you are applying physics where you look at the precision of the instrument, then after you round off to a certain based on precision. So some left in whole numbers. Then some left in 3 sig because you follow the chemistry version. So how? So I just accepted everything. Then they ask you to mark and label the period of ventricular systole, which is when it's contracting. This one requires a little bit of head knowledge. You should highlight this portion. Roughly speaking. I won't go into the details of whether you got the correct seconds or not. I also don't know. Okay, roughly in these regions. Yes? This side, a little bit earlier. Yeah, it's okay. I think if you follow the textbook, you should stop earlier. Yeah? Have you do it earlier? Please stop it earlier. I think stopping here would be nice. Where the intersection is. Then they ask you to label when one of the valves does something. I think that would be fine. They did not specify how to show it. Okay, then you're supposed to label when the semilunar valve opens, and it should open at this point up here. Yeah, I really want to caution you to pay attention whether the question asks for the left or right side of the heart or both. So that when you are asked to label, you label accurately. they ask you what causes the semilunar valve to open. Okay, for a valve to open, the basic concept that runs is that whatever chamber you are channeling it into, the pressure in one side of the valve needs to be higher than the other for the valve to open. Go one step back. What causes the pressure to be higher? Very often it's due to some form of contraction. So you need to include the idea that there's contraction and there's a difference in pressure. Pressure in the right ventricle is greater than the pressure in the pulmonary artery. If we across the idea there's a pressure difference, that would do the trick. Any other variants in your answer? Next, they ask you to calculate whatever a stroke volume is from this over here. It shows the changes in volume over time in the heart. It's very different from what we are used to, which is a change in pressure. However, the science goes like that. When volume decreases, pressure increases. Volume increases, pressure decreases. That's a rough idea. If we therefore look at this part of the heart, the timing, if the volume is decreasing, that means some sort of contraction is taking place. That means the pressure is simultaneously increasing, likely blood is leaving the chamber. When we see this part is rising, the volume is rising, likely it is in a state of relaxation where blood is coming in. Pressure also you can expect to be lower than when it was in a contracted state. So, when they ask you how to calculate, they say explain how you determine stroke volume. Okay, this one is a purely English thing. If I can make sense of what you're saying, okay. But the idea would be you have to subtract something over something, right? So one would subtract whatever you have over here minus the lowest point. Then you know what's the capacity. How you describe it, as far as I can understand, you get it. I do not think you can take this minus that. You get a negative kind of capacity, volume. Yeah? If you 0 minus negative 70, you become a plus, right? It's the one, right? It becomes 70. Minus 70 minus 0 is minus 70. This is the English we use, but really anything that can bring across the idea and let us know what you're doing will be good enough. It's kind of a repeat, therefore, of what you're going to do next, because that's exactly the workings of it. Yes. Correct, yes. Amia asked, whenever you see the word with reference to, should you make reference to whatever you see in the graph? Yeah, you should. This person did not try. Stroke volume can be determined by subtracting the end systolic volume from the end diastolic volume. Yeah, or for you could say, since it's number for you, that you can subtract the ventricular volume at number 1 minus the ventricular volume at number 4. Then you're making reference to the graph. Yeah.
Can it be tree? Because right, in like the notes, there's like this.
You see, can it be 3?
Yeah.
Oh, can the stroke volume be 3?
Yeah. Wait.
Sorry, did you say you mean minus 1 minus 3, is it? Or the stroke volume is just 3 cm cubed?
Like 3 minus 1 or 1 minus 3, whatever. Cause
Can
like,
also lah, can also 1
can,
minus
right?
3. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess the difference between 3 and 4 is at the really the lowest point. 3 not yet at the lowest point. 3 would be like there's still a little bit more. Yeah. Valid enough?
Just say the largest change in
Say again. So your explanation is that you will find the largest change in ventricular volume. From where to where? So you try and make reference to the graph, then it will be okay. Hello? Yeah, 1 and 2 are the same lah. So I think 2 also can. 2 minus 3. So I think just now, our contention here is that 3 is not at its lowest point yet. 3 is slightly before the lowest point. Oh, yeah. Then I think Yuan's point therefore is that you need to touch the bottom, then it's really negative 70. Fair enough. Yes, hi. Okay, yeah, that sounds okay. We are looking at a value like that. The rate we calculated by taking the volume divided by height. But this is a change of volume over time. Like calculated area. Why calculated area?
You use the script though, that's like the lowest one.
So I think your concept of area, right, only works if you're looking at if the x-axis, the y-axis, it's not just like volume. If it's a rate, it's time, you multiply together, then you get you want to get math wise. Because if you take volume times time, I don't know what you get. So that means y-axis needs to be a rate. Then you multiply a time, then makes sense. Determine. Usually determine means you will show something. State. If they just say state, then you don't need to do anything. It asks you state 3 differences between right and left side of the heart. I think there's quite a few. The most noticeable one would be the left side having a thicker muscular wall. That will be one of them. Other things you could mention. Okay, so first one would be definitely the thickness. The differences, therefore, they did not specify whether it's structural or functional. It leaves it quite open-ended. Other than muscular wall, you can compare whether it's transporting oxygenated or deoxygenated. You compare the structure of the valves. Actually, the tricuspid valve is called tri because it has 3 flaps. Bicuspid valve is called bi because it has 2 flaps. You can also talk about the amount of pressure each side of the heart can generate. I believe you can compare and contrast. Yes, you can use a table. If you want to use a table, how should your table look like? Your table needs to have 3 columns. One column for feature, then the other column for right side of heart and left side of heart. Then compare feature by feature. So for example, it could be thickness of vascular wall. Right side of the heart, very thick. Okay, it's in comparison with each other, so it should be thicker. Muscular wall and thinner, so on and so forth. Okay, this, yeah. So in your table form, doesn't mean you don't need to write sentences anymore. It should still be, it should still make sense when one reads it. Yes.
Can you compare like the direction of flow?
Ah, okay. What's the direction you're comparing?
Like from the right side is from the body to the lung, then the left side is from the lungs to the body. Yeah. Like we see from the body then pass to the lung.
Okay. So right side of the heart you're receiving from the rest of the body and then pumping to the lungs. Left side you're receiving from the lungs and pumping to the rest of the body. That's okay.
And then like make them into separate points, like receiving different.
I think that would be classified as 1 point. Yeah, because it's very similar. Okay, for those that don't adopt table format, this is fine. Okay, this is the only thing I will tend to see. Okay, so during your, if there's a compare and contrast question, you would want to make sure that you compare point by point. Don't compare, okay, this is what I mean. Don't do it like that. Don't say left side of heart, number 1 has thicker vascular wall, then after that pressure higher, then oxygenated, then you start writing about the right. Okay? Even at the Cambridge level, inside go A levels, they will not accept this. They do not see this as a comparison. They see this as a description of 2 things. Instead, when you compare and contrast, you need to compare feature by feature, not category by, not the thing that they ask you and then you just lump everything below. Okay, it's very dangerous. Even if you get every single point, you will get 0 even at A level side. Yes. Okay. Right side of the heart drives a short, low pressure pulmonary circuit. So short in the sense that the heart, when it goes to the lungs and come back, right? The lungs and come back is a shorter distance. Compared to the rest of the body, that circuit is longer. And this pressure will also be lower, if not your lungs will burst. Yes. But I feel like when you say tricuspid valve and the bicuspid valve, you want to bring to the audience what is separating. First point. This one over here. This one. What do you say? Vascular wall on the okay. But it's the ventricle. It is the ventricle responsible for pumping to the rest of the body, not the atrium. So it's specifically the ventricle. Or cannot compare names. Okay. So for anything, if you ask to compare anything, you cannot compare names. If you're desperate, you can write it down, but you will not help. Valentina? Can you say it pumps oxygenated blood? Can. You used to what? Do you use lines to draw? Do you mean the lines provided? Can. Yeah? So you can say Kai they provide horizontal lines, right? You just draw vertical lines to complete the table. If you want to, you can do that. Okay? Do you know our clock is fast? Is it deliberate? Trick us to make you walk out earlier. Yes, Zoe?
You see, cannot compare names, but then you see like the balls, like the tricuspid and everything.
Ah, I think what they are comparing here is not the comparing the name, they're comparing the structure of the valve. One has 3 flaps, one has 2 flaps.
Then would it be better than just say that like the valve between the right atrium and the right ventricle?
Can. Will be better. Yeah, it sounds better. The valves between the is the oh okay. I see where you're coming from. This one implies that you are just comparing the names. You're comparing the flaps. Yes. So the valves between the right atrium and left and the right ventricle has 3 flaps. Then we should bracket the tricuspid valve. Yes, Bella? Okay, I think that's fair. Yeah. That is kind of like the lower point where they're comparing the circuit where it's going to. You should. I think the 0 means original state. Not that there is 0 volume. Why do you write B? I think it's fine. Comparing pressure. Anything else? Is there a lot more? Okay. They ask you to draw a few things. First one, label the 4 chambers and the inferior vena cava in the left pulmonary vein. Okay. We will not ask to list that on your exam because we only just told you vena cava and pulmonary vein. And left and right is to a higher detail. Yeah, I expect you to be able to label by now. Let's go to the next one. They ask you to draw the structure that prevents the flipping. Where will you draw the structure that prevents the flipping? You draw them over here. Assuming this is the valve, you want to draw the tendon here. Okay, so that's where you will draw it to prevent the flip. Oh, there's a lot more. If you look from a different perspective. Side view, just draw like this. Don't need a squiggly. Don't need a squiggle up. Straight line will do. Then they ask you to draw the direction of flow. This is the direction of flow. Here on the right hand side, you see blood comes in through the atrium, ventricle, then out of the vessels on top. So that's the flow. You okay? You have a question? Yes. What is part B? Oh, the poly candidate. I'm not sure if I taught you. I got show you before right, the demo, that you need that stringy thing, right? I don't think the other teacher do. Oh yeah, don't need that. Oh this, sorry these fellas over here, we did not go to that yet. We only gave you the chambers, the blood vessels, as well as the valves. 12 things. However, because there's this hole over here, you should draw some arrows going from here to the other side, and an arrow going from this side to this side. There is mixing of blood between that hole. Yes? Oh, okay. It's trying to leave off.
Then how do you fix the hole in the heart?
One could surgery, sewer the two ends together. Yeah. So it's so.
How does it even break open?
What's my English? Sorry?
How does it even like fall over with it?
Oh, born with it. Yeah. Because the heart develops in a way where the chambers come last and the middle section come last. So imagine you develop one pump first, then you start to form the layers, the barriers between each chamber. But when it doesn't form fully, doesn't connect, then you're left with a hole.
So it's something that like you have the surgery when you're young.
Or not necessarily, some people don't know they have it until adulthood. In fact, it's usually the men, when they go to army, then they have to do a health checkup before they go for their army, right? Then they'll discover this. Because they'll do x-rays and all sorts of stuff. Then a lot of people discover they have, well, not a lot, some people discover they have holes. Yes? Oh really? Okay, I've never heard this before. Oh, so your mom has? Okay. So what, cannot do CPR? If not? Wow.
How would the person be saving life or not?
Oh, yeah, so dangerous.
It's a large scar, so you know that it will be
Right. Is it because the part that was connected is vulnerable and damage again? I see. Wow, that's something new. Okay, so remember, if you were to perform CPR, you see one scar, you better not perform CPR. What do we do?
But what if they do it? What if they didn't even know they had a hole? So there's no scar.
Right? Okay, so morally, it's still the right thing to do CPR if you know how to do it. Okay? Yeah, but yes.
For the arrows, you have to draw like to the ischial, then to the vertical. Okay, you just like draw one.
Or one sweeping stroke. Yeah, that's fine. One sweeping stroke. Right, okay. This one? If you have a wild idea, but at least these are scientifically correct answers to why an individual may have problem gaining weight. This particular individual. Sorry, I had a tough time thinking of answers too. I had to research a little bit. First, how does getting less oxygen result in you not being able to gain weight that well? That one is a tough one. I think we'll stop for now.